It's spring. The birds are chirping away, the trees are blooming, the temperature's rising, and I hate every second of it. Luckily, this month has the perfect date to drive away my vernal blues. Friday the 13th. Welcome to the Oktoberfest podcast. I remain Jeff, your counselor for Campy Camp Carnage, and this is FridayFest. Last October, while I was struggling to complete the horrible gauntlet that was the Final Destinationathon, I thought it might be fun to run through some of the early horror franchises the same way. I should have known better, as watching those movies was a brain-flaying saga. But I'm just not that smart. So I watched all 10 Friday the 13th movies this week. Now, sticklers may call out that there are 12 Jason movies, including Freddy vs. Jason and the 2009 reboot, but I didn't want to watch those. And I might tell sticklers that Jason doesn't even feature in 3 of these movies, and they can fuck off. During this journey through the mad mayhem of mediocrity, I discovered that the Friday movie I had filed away in my memory didn't exist. It's bits and pieces from all the other movies conflated together into one much better movie. What are the things everyone knows about this franchise? Jason is the killer, except that in 2 of them he's not, and in another he's a demon slug or something. He wears a hockey mask, except that he doesn't get that mask until the end of part 3, when he takes off a corpse. He carries a machete, except he really just uses whatever's on hand. The man is the MacGyver of massacre. He'll kill with whatever is around, be it a pitchfork or a metal spike or a sleeping bag. The foundations of this series are a lie. The origin story shifts a bit in every movie. His lore is constantly rewritten, and it's all pretty stupid. So what is the real core of the Friday franchise? Stupidity. Sheer fucking stupidity. Let's get into it. The year is 1980. A couple years earlier, this little project from an unknown director took a shoestring budget and turned it into almost $50 million in the box office, and launched a franchise that would define a genre. Paramount saw the success a little independent studio had with Carpenter's Halloween, and decided they could do it too, but better. They were incorrect. Friday the 13th introduces us to the peaceful, forested lands of Crystal Lake, where the townsfolk are backwoods hillbillies, the nearby summer camp is run by idiots, and police don't seem to mind a lunatic doomsday spouting drunk breaking into places, so long as they can make racist remarks about natives and troll teens. A squad of fodder has gathered to revive the old abandoned summer camp on the lake. Shut down after a series of accidents kept causing folks to die unexpectedly, not shown, and earning the place the nickname Camp Blood. Steve Christie, who is almost always referred to by both names for some reason, seemingly sold too much of his genes to keep the family's stake in the camp and get it running again. The dude's cutoffs are the most revealing clothing across the whole fucking franchise, and that is saying something. Steve Christie has a crew of teens, who are mostly mid-20s actors whose careers on the silver screen never took off, and Kevin Bacon. This is Roger Corman level, wait, he's in that? Baby Bacon is barely a character in this one, but he did get paid. It's actually his second role, Animal House being his first. I guess he saw a bunch of idiots getting abused and thought, thank you, sir, may I have another? The only character motivation we get for most of these people is let's have sex, with the trio actually starting up a game of strip Monopoly, which may be the only way to make that game less fun. The names don't matter. We have the dumb jock guy, the funny guy who's really just obnoxious and you hope he dies first, the sluttiest girl, the other girls who are also slutty but less thirsty about it, and the one character who may have a brain in their head. It doesn't take very long for things to start going wrong for the fodder in the forest. The cook hitches a ride to camp and never arrives. A big storm hits, and one by one they drop off the board. We see some kills, mostly in Giallo-style killer vision to keep our hunter a mystery. Is it Steve Christie? He's gone for most of the movie, but nope. Rather than building some red herring in there, they just keep showing him trying to find his way back to the camp. In the end, it's revealed that Pamela Voorhees, mostly referred to as Ms., has been doing some reverse psycho. She's talking to her long-dead son, who drowned in the 50s at camp because the counselors were too busy boning to keep the kid safe. Totally rational response, spending the next 3 decades slaughtering people who weren't even born when it happened. So, Pam knocks off the whole camp load, save our survivor girl, whose name is still unimportant, and for some reason decides to talk to this one rather than kill her immediately. M. Voorhees gets a real bad haircut, and her head decides to take a vacation from her body, with some help from a traumatized teen and a machete. Survivor Girl climbs aboard a canoe and pushes out to the middle of the lake, passing out from terror and exhaustion. She wakes up to find cops on shore, poking around the aftermath, only to be attacked by a deformed child bursting from the water. And then she actually wakes up and will have PTSD forever, or at least until 10 minutes into the next movie. More on the Psycho connection. There's a lot borrowed from the Hitchcockian tradition here, albeit much lower class. The Giallo style and backwards mother-son dynamic, but there's also the psych-out protag. The camp's cook is the first character we meet, and she doesn't survive to get to camp. The composer, Harry Manfredini, intentionally calls in elements of Psycho and Jaws themes. Manfredini is also responsible for the trademark shh, 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 which is actually him saying kill and mommy into some gear, inspired by Betsy Palmer's rantings in the final moments of her Mrs. Voorhees performance. Fun fact, word is Palmer took the role because her car broke down and she needed $10K to get it fixed. She figured no one would watch this shit anyhow. Good call, Bets. Here we are 46 years later, and Crystal Lake is about to be a TV series on the cock. Just 1 year later, Paramount squatted over the side of their LA high-rise and plopped out Friday the 13th Part 2, taking what could have been a mediocre slasher in a sea of similar trash and turning it into a legacy franchise for the ages. Part 2 only barely qualifies as a movie. It's an extended TV episode. It opens with a nearly 10-minute recap of the first movie, a trend that continues in nearly every other part, intercut with some short scenes of our survivor from Part 1 doing chores around her apartment and talking to her mother. It's been a couple of months, and the heroine who decapitated a 50-something woman who just needed proper psychiatric care is getting back on her feet, until she discovers the head of her victim in her fridge and gets killed off before the opening credits. After the thrilling credits, 3 minutes of black screen with white text, yawn, we cut to 5 years later. New camp is getting warmed up at the site of the old grisly murders. And because history loves repeating, we have the same archetypes: jock, unfunny comedian, etc. And our final girl, Jenny, who is working on a degree in child psychology. This is the only time in the series we've been told any type of character detail outside of who wants to bang whom. So a seasoned moviegoer will file that one away. We've also got a guy in a wheelchair. The events unfold a lot like the first chapter, but with a lot more close-ups of butts. If you're into tush, this is the flick for you. All our butts gather at the camp for counselor training because I guess that's a thing. I don't think there are any kids at camps here until Part 6. You can machete a cripple in the face, but you can't terrorize children? Weird lines to draw, but alright. We meet the new crew, and they do the now cliche, are you afraid of the dark style campfire background, telling the story of Jason Voorhees, the kid who didn't drown and watched his mother get decapitated. And here we are, 2 movies in and already hitting a logic error. If Jason didn't drown and has just been living feral in the woods, why did old Pam go bonkers and kill folks for decades? How could he have both witnessed and been the cause of his mother's death? Bad writing and a general lack of interest in continuity. These are the true hallmarks of this series now that I think about it. Too much fun. This particular plot hole was obvious to the legendary Tom Savini, who had done the makeup and effects in Part 1, and who suggested the big creepy kid fake out at the end of that movie. He refused to be involved in Parts 2 and 3 because they didn't make any sense, but returned for Part 4 because money. This is a lot to keep track of. Write all this down. There'll be a test at the end. The gang gets up to the usual shenanigans in these things, breaking into pairs to bone down or talk about boning down. Big Boss and our final girl head into town to hit a bar because if it's good enough for Steve Christie, it's good enough for Paul and Ginny, leaving a bunch of idiots alone in the woods. On the upside, by the time they get back, there'll be a lot less idiots to deal with. They've been got by Jason, who's sporting a burlap sack on his head in this one. They keep the Giallo-style POV for a lot of these, but they announce the killer from the start, so there's no mystery aspect at play. I think they knew that it's spookier not to show him than to have the Elephant Man tromping around poking people with sharp stuff. The slashing is pretty generic, save for Mark, our wheelchair-bound fella. Jason buries a machete in his head and rolls him down a flight of stairs, in one of the series' most iconic shots. Ginny and her boss boyfriend, someone call HR, come back and find the bloodbath. Paul gets knocked around, Ginny flees into the woods, coincidentally stumbling upon Jason's shack. Look, I know he lives near the camp, and this is part of the premise, but the forest is big. Just happening upon the killer's hovel where he keeps the corpse of his dead mother in some kind of foul-smelling shrine is a pretty good convenience. Also, how the fuck did he get her body? She was dead on the shore surrounded by cops at the end of Part 1. He's got her in the same damn clothes, which I suppose is so we'll recognize her. We sure ain't doing it by the mummified head he's got laying around. Anyhow, Ginny remembers that in her intro to child brain doctoring, the best way to get through to a deformed feral psycho killer man-child is to pull on his dead mother's sweater and give him a stern lecture, which she does. This confuses him long enough for Paul to reappear and bury a machete in the shoulder of the woodsman, and the pair leave him for dead because they haven't seen Zombieland. Double tap, damn it. They wander back to the safety of their cabin, and then Jason smashes through the window. Snap cut to Jenny waking up in an ambulance, calling out for Paul, who is never mentioned again. Released just a year later, Part 3 kicks off with the traditional Previously On segment, replaying the damning indictment of either Jenny's appearance or Jason's face blindness, as the dude can't tell his mother's decaying head from that of a college student. And then we get the great warning of the film as the credits fly at us in 80s 3D style. Ah, fuck. It's one of those movies. The early 80s had a wave of flicks shot in gimmick style. This one and Jaws 3D and Amityville 3D, they're all hot garbage. Strap in for annoying shots of a yo-yo coming at the camera for way too long, and lots of kills involving objects moving towards the camera. And thanks to the HD era, enjoy seeing all the fishing line they used to make the effects work. It's one day after the events at Higgins Haven. We're given some establishing news position to set that up, and a new group of lunch meat is heading up to the cabin, just down the way from the massacre. We've got a couple of weirdos thrown in this time. The van's mostly packed with our 25-year-old teens like usual, but also for some reason a pair of stoners who look like they could be their parents. This is probably what it looks like when I go out drinking with my coworkers. Why is your uncle angry? They never acknowledge this in the movie, but Cheech and Chonga go to Camp Crystal Lake is a weird addition to the crew. Also along for the ride are generic father guy and his girlfriend, who references being pregnant precisely one time to establish some detail for her character, and then the fact is never relevant again. Chris, our final girl, though this isn't established until deep into Act 2, the traditional bad comic relief guy, whose name I actually do remember for once, and his blind date for the weekend, the outcast girl who seems like she'd be the last one standing. Now, we need to talk about Shelley. Shelley's the comic relief D-bag this time, and by gods is he obnoxious. He carries a bag full of props around like a low-rent carrot top. His timing is terrible, and his jokes are all stupid, abrasive pranks. Crap like sneaking up on people with a fake knife, or pretending to have a heart attack, or posing as a psycho killer while people around him are being killed by a psycho killer. He moans about how if he doesn't do this shit, no one would notice him. But at least if no one noticed him, everyone wouldn't hate him. He's the kind of guy that would be sympathetic if he weren't so pathetic. Aside from being the character I want to see die the most in this flick, Shelley has an important role in this franchise. But we'll get to that. So this truckload of dopes rolls up to their cabin in the woods, not worrying about the legion of cops combing over the mass murder site down the street, and proceed to do stupid crap no one cares about. Chris is constantly on the verge of a meltdown because of what happened to her. She hasn't been back since it happened. She's so traumatized by it happening that she just won't fucking tell us what happened. Are we supposed to recognize her from one of the other two movies? Is she supposed to be Ginny with a new name? Everyone else we know is dead, but they don't give a shit about continuity here anyhow. No, she just keeps alluding to things we aren't given any context for until she decides to reveal that she was almost killed by Jason in the woods a couple of years back. Like 70 minutes into the film. While she's mood swinging around like a manic depressive on bath salts and ketamine, her old flame Rick is pushing up on her like a sailor fresh off an 18-month stint at sea. She's barely out of the car before he's suggesting they go have sex. She asks him to chill out because they haven't spoken in ages, and he says something like, I can only wait so long. Like he's the victim here. What a prick. So Dickie and PTSD girl are doing the date rape two-step in the cabin while the outcast girl is unpacking or something, and Prego and her boyfriend play with a yo-yo in the barn. You know the barn, that one building that every cabin in the woods needs on the property? Trauma Girl is about to talk about why she's nervous about being at the place, and sensing the worst possible time for this shit, Shelley decides to pull one of his I've been killed gags. Everyone thinks he's an asshole, and Outcast Girl declares she has to get out of there. So she borrows Rick's car to go into town, where they just came from, because someone going into town is apparently needed in these. Shelley tags along, and the two of them end up having an altercation with a trio of shithead biker punks at the convenience store. Vera, the outcast, shows she has some guts by standing up to the tough guys, and then Shelley the fuck up runs over their motorcycles outside the place, turning what should have been a minor incident into a whole fucking thing. The pair head back to the cabin. People start to get Jasoned, and then the bikers show up intending to burn everyone alive. That escalated quickly. While they're fucking around in the barn, Jason shows up and does his thing there too. They exist solely to pad the body count. And runtime. Now we're getting to the good bit. Folks are missing, but Chris is too busy fending off Ricky Boy's advances. Vera's chilling by the docks, and Shelley decides he needs attention, so he goes into his bag of tricks and pulls out a hockey mask. Jason kills him, takes it, and an icon is born. The whole goddamn brand is built on a throwaway prop from one of the most annoying characters in a franchise full of annoying characters, played by a man who they literally hired off the street and who never acted again. That's why we all think of Goalie Face as the killer in the woods. For fuck's sake. All right, let's wrap up this mess. Jason kills the chick I thought was going to be our heroine with a harpoon to the face. There's that fishing line again. And makes quick work of the annoying prankster, then terrorizes our actual heroine until she buries an axe in his head. Then we get an homage to the original ending. Girl in a canoe after everyone is dead. But this time, Mrs. Voorhees pops out of the water. Chris wakes up and it's just a dream, but how is she dreaming about a lady that she's never encountered? This is all 5 years after the event part 1, and Pammy ain't mentioned by anyone in this flick. It's all Jason all the time. Which brings me to one of the most consistent fixtures of this whole franchise. Complete and total inconsistency. It's only been 3 movies and the lore is already conflicting itself all over. Characters know things they shouldn't, or things that didn't happen but we're supposed to just run with. Now, you may say that I'm only catching these things because I watched them all back to back in this binge, and that wasn't a thing in the early 80s, the dawn of VHS. That's almost fair. But they released these 3 movies in about 24 months, and give you recaps for half of the runtime. If you paid any attention to them, the flaws are going to be glaring. Audiences at the time didn't seem to care, though, as the first 3 movies brought in nearly $100 million in unadjusted box office on a budget of less than 6. They basically cemented the A23 formula. Spend low, earn high. The piles of money flowing in weren't enough to convince the producers of the franchise to keep going, though. So in 1984, they intended to end the series with Part 4, The Final Chapter. A hysterical title in retrospect, what with 6 more movies in front of me. Early points here. They kept the previously on segment to 3 minutes this time. And we're out of the credits about 5 minutes in, meaning they actually had enough movie to fill the runtime for once. Nice work. Did the bare minimum. We get started immediately following the events of Part 3, with Jason's body being dragged to the morgue by some terrible EMTs, to be checked out by a terrible coroner, who is so busy trying to get laid next to dead folks he doesn't notice the corpse get up until it decapitates him. Jason also chokes out the nurse who was hooking up with the now shorter death doc. We cut to the woods. A couple of ladies are jogging back to their cabin, where a young Corey Feldman is waiting. This is our main family, the Jarvises. Tommy, Trish, and their mom. Moved out to the woods because divorce or something, it's unimportant, but they haven't noticed that their neighbors have a tendency to get diced. We also meet the usual group of additional body count. A group of idiot young adults rolling up to party in the woods. Most notably, a pre-Back to the Future Crispin Glover, already being super fucking weird. He is lamenting breaking up with his girlfriend, and his annoying wannabe stud buddy refers to him as a dead fuck, which is used way too many times in the script. It's not a particularly clever line, but they just keep bringing it back up like it's fetch. The gang decides to hike down to the lake for some swimming hole fun, and encounters a pair of sisters who instantly get wrapped up into their shenanigans, and the whole bunch decide to go skinny dipping, in front of a minor, turns out. Romping around naked in a public lake may not be the smartest move. These days, all of these kids would end up on a list for this shit. Trish and Stand By Me head to the lake for something, and find the naked morons, get invited to a party later, and head home. On the way back, they run into Rick, who gives a shit? He's a sketchy dude running around the woods hunting bear, but he's really there for Jason. His sister was one of the nameless masses off in the previous movie, and he wants revenge. His big plan seems to be go to the woods with a knife and some news clippings, and that's about it. We do get some evidence of Tommy being some kind of boy genius, though. His sister's car breaks down, and she immediately assumes he can fix it, and after taking a look at the engine, he explains he could if he only had a screwdriver. Look, we've been doing the same thing for multiple movies already. You know the drill. Jason shows up and starts whacking fools. Idiots do the idiot things. Let's fast forward to the end where things get interesting. Pretty much everyone's toast. Tommy and Trish are back at their house after everyone, especially revenging Rob, got cut up at the party house down the road. While Trish fights off Jason on the first floor, Mouth somehow channels the spirit of Ginny, our heroine from 2 episodes earlier, and gets the bright idea to shave his head and put on horror makeup to look like the drowned boy version of Jason. Trish survives long enough for the Goonie to finish his extreme makeover and come downstairs to mindfuck a mentally challenged trauma victim with an admittedly toxic outlet for his pain. Jason gets distracted long enough for Trish to machete him, but finally someone has seen a horror movie before. Donatello grabs the machete and hacks at the body of old Jace for all the some time, like an uncomfortable amount of hacking at a corpse. His sister looks on with increasing concern, and the movie closes out with the kid giving the million-mile stare out the back of an ambulance. I guess that tracks. This sets us up for the next two movies. Parts 4 through 6 are the Tommy Jarvis arc. Feldman doesn't come back for much of Part 5, A New Beginning, but he's in the cold open. We don't get the recap this time. They get right into this shit, and it's just the start of what makes this movie so different from the others. This installment doesn't run the formula. It legitimately tries to make a movie out of this mess. It could be the greatest Friday the 13th of all time. But it's not. It's hot goddamn garbage. Let's talk about it. We open with not Corey Haim roaming through the woods in the rainstorm. He finds a couple jackasses digging up a grave of Jason Voorhees, which is just in the middle of nowhere, but everyone knows exactly where to find it. Of course. They pop the casket open, Jason kills them while Trauma Tom watches, and I'm wondering how any of this makes sense. And then he wakes up. He's actually a big boy now, supposedly a teen, but he looks like he's pushing 30. Then again, all the teens here have that look, so I guess it tracks. He's been in mental health facilities since he went nutso on the serial murder at the end of the last flick, and for good reason. He keeps hallucinating and seeing Jason everywhere, even all these years later. Old Tom gets shipped off to a new place, a super smart idea someone had to put violent mental patients in an unguarded campground on the honor system. This was always going to end well. Because this is an F-13 movie, a couple of the patient campers are out humping in the woods nearby, which pisses off the neighborhood foul-mouthed lunatic trailer trash mom and her idiot son, who make a good point to the sheriff that these crazy people should be locked up, but misses the irony that she should be as well. I'm not sure if she's supposed to be comic relief or a political cartoon. Doesn't matter either way. I hate her. We spend a little time playing Getting to Know You with the various oddballs around the place, the frisky couple, the pre-emo music girl, the bland girl, the bland guy, the fat stupid guy, the barely contained ball of rage who's chopping wood like it fucked his wife, the kindly old grandpa, his annoying grandson who hangs around crazies because reasons, and the couple who run the funny farm. This could have been an interesting and engaging section of character building, but they seemingly decided to skip the whole script part and just have the actors ad-lib. At least that's what I hope, because the dialogue is real bad. Fatty bothers Steroid Jack a bit too long, and the dude does pretty much exactly what you'd expect a mental patient with an axe to do, and murders the ambergris out of the dope, while everyone on the camp looks on in disbelief. A couple of paramedics show up and cart the dead guy off. Things go back to whatever normal is at a place where everyone seems about a half sentence away from going Kim Jong-un at a Golden Corral, and then Jason shows up and starts making people dead. Jason's a bit different this time. His mask has blue accents instead of red. His jumpsuit is brighter and cleaner. All that could be the movie not giving a shit, but we get traditional Jason in Tommy's hallucinations, so they know what he should look like. For the first time since the original, the filmmakers built some mystery around the killer. Is it Tommy gone mad? Is it really Jason back from the dead again? Is it a character they didn't introduce and was only on screen for 30 seconds and never referenced again until the reveal? It's the last one. One of the paramedics who cleaned up the dead fat kid was killing folks all over the place because he was secretly his father. There's no hint of this in the movie. It's not discovered naturally. They just sort of say it at the end, taking what could have been a clever twist on the series and turning it into a mess with absolutely no heart. In the end, we've got Tommy, the grandson from camp, and Pam, the lady who ran it, surviving. In the hospital, Jason's ghost visits Tommy again, and he pulls the mask from a drawer next to his bed. How? Why? He puts it on, and they imply that he starts a new killing spree by offing Pam, grandfather, who gives a shit? But they end the movie before anything happens. The copycat killer, the mystery element, the fact that they tried to build a dynamic character in Tommy who keeps getting deeper and deeper into madness as everyone around him dies. It's all really interesting. But they fucked all of it up. Not just in this movie, but by making the next one. Friday the 13th, Part 6, Jason Lives. It's 1986 now. The 70s are well behind us, and the series keeps on ticking. Tommy Jarvis is back, but as an entirely different person. Not just a different actor who looks nothing like the last guy, but a whole different personality. They never acknowledged the events of the last movie ever happened, sort of like the whole world has done with The Last Jedi. We're going to do this recap real dirty because I'm already running long and we got a lot more to cover. Tommy and his pal head up to Jason's grave to make sure he's dead, because Tommy thinks they'll make him less crazy. When he opens the box and sees the dead monster, he loses his shit like he did when he was 12 and impales him with a piece of iron fencing, which gets struck by lightning, bringing Jason Voorhees back to the living, to make them into the dead. JV drops Tommy's red shirt buddy. Tommy bolts to the cops to explain that Jason is back, but the sheriff takes a page from the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise and gets instantly hostile if anyone even hints that the unkillable psycho that murdered 100 people on this lake is real. Tommy makes a big enough stink to get arrested, and the sheriff's daughter shows up to instantly want to bang the guy her dad just put in lockup. She works at an active summer camp nearby, first one of the series, and pretty much abandons her friends to go on a serial killer hunt with a dude she's known for 8 minutes. Jason does what Jason do, murders his way through randoms around and in the camp. Tommy decides the only way to kill Jason is to return him to the lake where he supposedly drowned because, sure, why not? So Bonnie and Clyde strap a chain to a rock and help him cosplay as Jack and Titanic. There are some fun moments in this one, despite the utter insanity of the premise. There's a squad of misogynist execs doing a team-building paintball thing in the woods, making for some feel-good anti-corpo massacre. The movie's set back at Camp Crystal Lake, renamed to Forest Green in a whitewashing campaign less effective than the cemetery relocation in Poltergeist. The camp is actually active for the first time. There are campers there. Jason approaches one little girl, and it seems like he's going to make some veal chops. But in the darkest moment of the franchise, she starts praying, and he realizes it's probably more cruel in the long run to reinforce her belief in a caring and benevolent God. Plus, he gets distracted by larger prey. Oh, and Alice Cooper did the music, so they've got that going for him. Part 6 marks the end of the Jarvis saga. Tommy has slayed his monster with the help of a boat motor, gravity, and the inability of humans to breathe underwater. The tone of Jason Lives is a bit lighter than the other entries, to its benefit. It's more fun than most of the rest, especially Part 5, which leans hard into drama and mystery, just hard enough to fall flat on its face. This franchise, like Nightmare, is really at its best when it embraces the absurdity of it all. When you've got the same villain dying 5 times in 5 years, you either laugh or quit. All in, 4 through 6 earned about $75 million in 80s dollars on about $8 million in budget, which isn't a bad return on investment, but the interest was dipping by the end. The final chapter brought in $33 million. Jason Lives earned less than 20. They were going to keep squeezing this teat. Paramount needed another angle, something fresh, something different. They needed Part 7, The New Blood. By 1988, Friday the 13th had been a theater regular for nearly a decade, and audiences were not as hungry as they used to be for this lukewarm tray of cafeteria slop. The box office numbers were slipping year over year, and a new contender had shown up to steal their eyeballs. This creepy burn victim who haunted people's dreams. Nightmare on Elm Street released its third movie, Dream Warriors, in '87 and brought in more than double what Friday Part 6 had earned the year before. Paramount wanted some of that action. They tried to work a deal to make a Freddy vs. Jason movie as Part 7 of their franchise, but New Line didn't agree to the terms. We'd need to wait another 15 years for that movie. So instead we got this one. Tina's a pretty normal Friday the 13th protagonist. Just an average girl who used to look like Carol Ann from Poltergeist, and accidentally killed her abusive father with telekinesis by dropping a pier on him at their cabin on Crystal Lake when she was a child. Yep, they went full nuts at the start here. Cut to some years later, grown Tina is dragged back to the site of the PTSD that has had her in therapy for her whole life by her mother, who is a total wimp, and mustache-twirling therapist Terry Kaiser, who you might recognize from such masterpieces as Tammy and the T-Rex. He intends to torture the girl's mind to get as much evidence of her psychic powers as possible, damn the consequences, and gaslights the women the whole way through. Of course, we can't have a murder party with just 3 victims, so a band of horny 20-somethings rolls up for a surprise birthday party at the next house over. After a super legit and helpful session with Weekend Bernie, Tina runs out to the water and tries to bring her dead father back to life. Evidently, she's forgotten about the whole physical abuse thing over the years, and accidentally wakes up Jason instead. He's still bouldered to the bottom of the lake from the end of the last movie, in a rare occurrence of continuity. The big guy is played by Kane Hodder this time, who is the definitive version of Jason, and will play the role for the next 4 films. He climbs out of the muck to go on his usual spree. Tina gets a chance to show off her powers to the neighbors when they get bitchy with her for crashing their party, fends off advances from a guy that ignores all the red flags taped to her forehead, mental patient, PTSD, telekinesis, rage issues, and eventually Psychic fights Jason to the death by resurrecting her dead boss. This flick is fucking weird. It's also not what it was intended to be. Director John Carl Buechler is known to genre fans as an effects guy, doing solid work all over the place. This movie was staged to be his horror effects masterwork, but the MPAA had other plans and made the studio remove almost all of the gore from the thing, leaving it a toothless, jagged cut hacksaw edit. One of the best kills in the franchise, a girl in a sleeping bag gets whacked against a tree, was supposed to be a brutal repeat rug beating, but they were forced to make it one quick swing. The worst assault in the movie was done to the film reel itself. Maybe we can get a director's cut someday, but I'm not holding my breath. We've been trolling around Crystal Lake or Forest Green for a long time now, and everyone's ready for a change of scenery. So in 1989, they finally decided to move us out of the woods. In part 8, the Muppets take Manhattan. Jason takes whatever. Despite the title, most of this movie takes place on a boat and was shot in Vancouver. They do make it to Times Square back when it was an open dumpster filled with hookers and garbage, just loose trash all over the place. Let's nutshell this bitch. Our heroine this time is Rennie, the oddball would-be author in her graduating class. The seniors are taking some kind of weird class cruise to celebrate graduating, maybe? It seems like school is over, but Rennie's overbearing dickbag uncle, who's some kind of school administrator, is on board chaperoning what I assume are a group of legal adults on a sex boat trip to the big city. They're leaving Crystal Lake on the SS Lazarus, hoping to bring the franchise back from the dead, I guess. Unfortunately for everyone on board, some pleasure boaters happen to drag anchor across a power line right next to the redrowned corpse of Kane Hodder, and we know what happens when you charge his batteries from part 6. So Jason hitches a ride to New York on the biggest party barge ever. Way too much boat for the maybe 24 people aboard. Anyhow, Titanic 2 makes its way to the city while stupid characters do stupid character shit. Rennie has visions of drowned child Jason because reasons again, and lots of folks get got. One of them is Kelly Hu, who's popped up all over the place since her breakout role as Anchorwoman in the Forgotten Rafe Fiennes joint Strange Days. Or maybe it was because of her bit in X2 or the tons of TV work, whatever. She gets killed by a guitar here. Talk about getting the axe, right? I'm sorry. Sorry about that one. After the stuck-up hot bully chick tries to drown our protag by pushing her off a moving ocean liner, which is almost certainly attempted manslaughter at least, she tries to entrap the asshole authority figure with a video of him turning her down when she tries to fuck him. This won't hold up in court. And she and pretty much everyone else die, and the ship gets lost in the storm with no one to steer it. Miraculously, they make it to Manhattan and bring the boat to a stop without sinking, with old man Grumpy Pants bitching the whole time. But find themselves in the bad part of town. Rennie gets abducted almost immediately by a couple of junkies who end up being the penetrated parties when Jason shows up to get his own action. Our heroine, her cardboard cutout boyfriend, and her uncle are on the run from the unstoppable maniac, with Uncle Shitface still being a cock every time he opens his mouth, when she suddenly remembers that he tried to drown her as a child and she met Ghost Boy Jason under a lake. This doesn't matter. Eventually, they end up in a sewer under Times Square that evidently fills with a torrent of toxic sludge every night, and Jason gets melted away like a meal in RoboCop. I was really hoping he'd end up all Secret of the Ooze Shredder, but instead he Benjamin Buttons back to little boy form and dies. As does Paramount's run of Friday the 13th movies. Paramount spent 9 years and 8 movies building an unstoppable supernatural killing machine, and ended their run by turning him into a sad wet child in a sewer. That's not a conclusion. That's a cry for help. New Line, who already owned the Nightmare franchise, picked up the series 4 years later. They bought the rights to Jason Voorhees, but somehow didn't get Friday the 13th in the deal. So their 1993 film wasn't part 9 like it should have been, but just Jason Goes to Hell. It felt like I was the one being punished. Let's get this out of the way right at the top. This movie isn't about an unkillable giant hacking his way through teens like a butcher on methamphetamines. It's about a demon slug body hopping to get to the last Skywalker and grow a new body. It's a super weird turn on a franchise that, while not exactly grounded in reality, had largely left magic out, except for Tina, but we're not going to talk about Tina. Gone are the opening 10-minute recaps, but the movie still starts off familiar. A girl in a cabin getting ready to shower off, weird noises, lights go out. Jason arrives. Toxic waste age regression? What toxic waste age regression? And she runs out into the woods. But it's a trap. Somehow his MO has been discovered, and an army of SWAT dudes pops out of the forest and blows the shit out of him. His remains are shipped off to a lab where they somehow possess a coroner, and the body swap nightmare begins. We've got a lunatic bounty hunter, Jason's retconned half-sister and niece, and a handful of kill patters rolling around while Jason tries to get his groove back. The bounty hunter, Creighton Duke, who really should have been played by Keith David, it's such a Keith David role, informs everyone that Jason can only really be killed by another Voorhees. Convenient, they decided to create not one but two of those, and that he's a demon from hell or some shit. They seem to have taken an early draft of the much better Denzel Washington flick Fallen and slapped Jason into it. Look, this movie blows. It's not fun. It doesn't feel like a Jason movie, and pretty much no one recognizable is in it. New Line dropped $3 million in production budget, and who knows how much for character rights, and got back a paltry $15 million on this one because it was bad and dumb and bad, and it would be nearly 10 years before they tried again. In 2000, New Line filmed another chapter in the series, but it wasn't until 2002 they decided to release it as a lead up to the much more anticipated Freddy vs. Jason, which would finally happen in 2003. Sitting on a movie for 2 years only to let it out as a marketing ploy for another film is the true indicator of quality, of course. Like a fine wine, you want your early aughts CG shitfest to age in the cask. This movie looks like garbage. We open at a containment facility where Jason, played for the fourth and final time by Kane, is being held in chains and goalie mask. Some prick doctor, played by body horror titan David Cronenberg, has decided that instead of getting a deep freeze, old Jace should be studied, because keeping an unstoppable killing machine free to do science has never hurt anyone ever. Jason kills him and pretty much everyone else before getting himself Futurama by a lady scientist who accidentally flash freezes herself as well. Cut to some hundreds of years later. A space-age field trip discovers the frozen pair and takes them into a Hitchhiker's Guide knockoff shuttle to bring them aboard the SS Dumb Fuckery, where Jason inevitably gets revived and starts a murdering again. Apparently fabric is in short supply in the future because not a single female is wearing a full shirt through the entire movie. I'm sure it's an artifact of the lore and not the director being a perv. One of the space kids has an android girlfriend who tries to take on Jason and gets decapito. But after he puts her into a new body and then bangs it, she goes all Mila Jovovich and, well, pretty much any Mila Jovovich role in this era, and kills the balls out of him. Unfortunately, she kills him into a high-tech med bay that can use nanobots to reattach limbs and shit. And double unfortunately, no one seems to think leaving his corpse on the operating table is a bad idea. So we get the biggest, dumbest thing to come out of the franchise that gave us Roy the Paramedic. Cyborg Jason. They toss in some sci-fi trope drama notes here to try to raise the stakes, but we're multiplying by zero because no one gives a shit. Jason cleaves his way through the crew before getting knocked out in airlock and then jammed into the atmosphere of Earth 2 by a heroic Deus Ex Suicida, where Robo Voorhees lands in a familiar lakeside forest setting. Jason 2442, the sci-fi show that never was. What a miss. This movie is dumb as hell, and as stated before, the effects are ugly. But it's also pretty self-aware of its inanity and leans into good effect. If you can switch off your brain, there are plenty of jokes and throwbacks to make this one of the most fun entries in a series that, honestly, takes itself way too seriously most of the time. Jason finally gets the sleeping bag slaughter he was denied in Part 7. Peter Mensa continues his trend of playing badass commanders who get their asses kicked. You probably know him as the guy who got turned into stew meat in Resident Evil or Doctora in Spartacus. If you watch 4 Friday the 13th movies, this should be one of them. And that makes it top 50%. And there we have it, the whole damn run so far, without the odd reboot and the crossover. What a nightmare. I'm not going to lie, this took me almost as long to write up as it did to watch. Maybe I bit off more than I can chew with this 10 movies a month idea. Whatever. If it wasn't a glutton for punishment, this whole podcast would have been a non-starter. I hope you've enjoyed or at least tolerated this saga of slasher schlock. Remember that if your franchise has nowhere to go but into space, it's probably time to quit. I'm looking at you, Fast and Furious. As always, you can hit me with, well, actuallys at octoberfestcast@gmail.com or by commenting at the site, octoberfest.substack.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep it campy.